the heart of Lord Krishna. That he will reciprocate with us for services we offer in the future. But how to maximize the benefits of that dynamic? Visualize who and what you want to be in your service. You know, thoughts send a message out with an electric charge. Feelings attract results back with a magnetic charge. The thinking of the mind integrated with the feelings of the body, practiced in a visualization, creates an electromagnetic field that activates resources in our proximity to help us become who and what we want to be. It has to be guided by Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, or it can mislead us. But if it is, and what sadhana bhakti means, we're practicing being something we're not. That means you also have to see it and believe it and feel it if you're going to develop it and attract that reality to you and make you receptive to receive it when it does come. Gratitude is the catalyst. It just activates all the higher sentiments, eclipses the lower ones, and it means that to the subconscious mind that this already happened. And therefore, when somebody compliments you, you're such a nice devotee, and you don't believe it, but you can visualize it as a future possibility, drawn into your present experience through providential grace as a response to an attitude of gratitude. And then, of course, here in New Vrindaban, we were blessed with that most unconventional darshan. I assume you all know the one I'm talking about. Where Srila Prabhupada, and it's the role of the Acharya to take what is implicit in Shastra and make it explicit for our understanding. And he did that in such an outstanding way. And that wonderful darshan at Madhavan in 1974 or 6. I don't know if you all know the one I'm talking about, or if I should repeat it again, or what. You don't know? Should we repeat it? Even if you've heard it umpteen times already, it's ever fresh, and you just go deeper into the dynamics. You know, we would have darshan with Srila Prabhupada, this was 76 because he's staying in Sankirtan Prabhu's house. So we'd set up the Vyasasana in the lawn, and he'd give darshan every evening. And it was, sweet and intimate and mellow, and And then our godbrother Taru, he asked the question: how do we respond to local farmers when we preach and they say, we don't have time for Krishna consciousness because we're farmers? Farming takes all your time. It's not that, live the agricultural life and then you'll have lots of time on your hands for Krishna consciousness. It doesn't work like that. It means your time is of such quality. Your Krishna consciousness really flourishes. Anyway, so it's a legitimate answer. We don't have time. We're farmers. It takes up all your time. So Taru asked Srila Prabhupada, how do we respond to that? 'So now Srila Prabhupada stood in the Vyasasana, Krishna Maharaj fanning him on this side with a chamara. Drishtadyumna Maharaj fanning him on this side with a peacock fan. Very sweet scene, very peaceful. And Srila Prabhupada, stroking the lions, forming the armrests on his Vyasasana. Real sweet, real mellow, real peaceful. Till Taru asked that question. Then things started to change. Srila Prabhupada turned to Krishna Maharaj and said, how would you answer that? And he said, according to Bhagavad Gita, and Srila Prabhupada was very animated, he threw out his hand to make it clear. And then he said, don't bring in Bhagavad Gita. Now this is something new. Because up until that time, everything had to be substantiated by Bhagavad Gita. I mean, he didn't just say it, he forcefully put his hand out in front of him. Don't bring in Bhagavad Gita. At this point, the devotees are becoming very attentive. So he turned to Drishtadyumna Maharaj, how would you answer that? So he was on the spot. So he tried something. He said, Krishna says, and Srila Prabhupada did the same thing. He threw out his other hand, forcefully, to stop him. And he said, don't bring in Krishna. Now this is really something new. Serious, appropriate, worthy question, and you can't bring in Krishna or Bhagavad Gita. And we're all wondering, where is Guru Maharaj going with this? So Taru was sitting right in front of him, and Srila Prabhupada leaned over. In the slang, you would say he got right in his face. And Srila Prabhupada could get animated and even intense at times. And this was going in that direction, so he got right. Rascal. Not really addressing Taru, but the imaginary farmers he was representing. Rascal. Can you make the sun shine? Can you make the rain fall? You're farmers? That means you're totally dependent on Krishna at every step. Show gratitude. Two-word answer. Show gratitude. And he was a little intense at this moment. For those who think that Srila Prabhupada is just always mellow, that may be a fictitious version of Srila Prabhupada, because his mood could be very reminiscent of Lord Nisringadev. The good thing is it didn't last. So he got intense for a few minutes. He made his point, and then he was all mellow, and everything was peaceful again. The next few days, the talk of the town was that Darshan, that question, and especially Taru was just in ecstasy how his question was answered. Now, being that it made quite an impression, we've been led to contemplate what is this attitude of gratitude that is so dynamic. And then when I saw that purport in Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on Brahma Vimohan Lila, internal dialogue, Brahma is really morose because of what he just done. And Krishna didn't say a word to him. Explicitly, ostensibly. There's an internal dialogue where Krishna tells Brahma, ordinary people are grateful when they receive a gift they find meaningful or valuable. I'm different. I'm grateful for gifts my devotees will offer me in the future, and I reciprocate with them in advance. It is the function of the Acharya to take what is implicit in Shastra and make it explicit for our understanding. And that particular darshan was exemplary in that regard. So once again, what if we are conditioned to self-loathing, to low self-esteem, to feeling unworthy, that we can't even properly receive healthy compliments from devotees? Gratitude. Grateful that they see that in me, because that means it's there, and it will manifest in time if I simply accept. And if I'm grateful for the outcome before it even comes, my subconscious mind will accept it as a reality that is already manifest. And then there will be a vibrational match between what's being offered and what's being received, and that will greatly facilitate bringing it into manifestation. All right?
I had this thought while you're narrating that story again, that it sounded like Srila Prabhupada was also emphasizing when we're interacting with others who may be new or not exposed to Krishna consciousness, our sensitivity at approaching it at their level. Because in the two devotees who gave a response to Prabhupada, they both quoted Krishna, which is completely unfamiliar, unrelatable, or Bhagavad Gita, but then just by the tangible, the rain's coming, you can't control it, just be grateful for that seemed like also a lesson maybe he's trying to teach in that example, that we need to preach at the right level.
A very important consideration in that is, I think we can bring in both Krishna and Bhagavad Gita at this point. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant. What does that mean? It means if you're trying to offer Krishna consciousness to someone who doesn't have it, who may not be able to relate to it, first of all, do not undermine whatever faith they have in whatever, because that'll make them cling to it more and be more resistant to what you have to give. If you acknowledge something worthy in them, even though it may not be very, very worthy, it may just be that the acknowledgement itself is the only worthy element. You acknowledge. There's a common saying and belief and hope that Krishna loves us as we are, where we are. Oftentimes, we divorce that from the rest of the verse. And he loves us too much to leave us there. So if you accept someone as they are, where they are, they'll feel safe. That you're not out to undermine them. And then clobber them over the head with your superior philosophy. That closes the heart. If you acknowledge them for whatever they are, wherever they are, whoever they are, because everyone has some good in them. You look at Adolf Hitler. He was pushing that all of Germany become vegetarian state. Now, I mean, he's like the archetype of undesirable qualities, but he had some good things. He did not approve of his generals going hunting. He had great appreciation for the Aryan race in the Vedic version. And his ambition, amongst others, was to make Germany a vegetarian state. Now, if somebody like that has some good qualities, what does that mean? You can find good in anyone. And what you focus on is what you're giving energy to grow. Find some good. Acknowledge that. And that means you're cultivating that. You're bringing it more to fruition. And most of all, that'll establish a rapport, a connection, possibly even a friendship. And they'll open their heart to what you have to say. And we don't want to push Krishna consciousness down their throats. We want them to develop sufficient appreciation of us that they're going to want to hear what we have to say. And when they want to hear it, you're in an opportune position to offer it. All right? Like Srila Prabhupada talking to the race car driver, talking about racing cars. Now Srila Prabhupada, I don't believe, really had any great ambition or interest in racing cars. But because he was talking to a race car driver, the first thing he did was establish some rapport. And then the man wanted to know what he had to say. Yes.
They were very stern, and they were like they gave love, but through very strict instructions. So they didn't linger with their, giving them comfort, making them feel comfortable, because their love was so strong that even when they were stern, it came through. So I worry about that approach, because sometimes it can come across as the person can falsely identify it with, they're okay how they are. This is enough for them. They're still getting the love, so why progress any further?
So what's your question?
So my question is, although you're saying that, Gurudev, but Srila Prabhupada, he did that, I understood, through making sure that the strictness in what's required externally was there, and he introduced the philosophy straight away. There was no delay.
But he was very lenient in the beginning.
Okay, so you cite Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the Sima Guru, and his disciples would, question Srila Prabhupada. It was quite an easy relationship with him, and they said, watch out, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. He said, well, fool, maybe, I'm going to do it anyway. And Srila Prabhupada could be all that intense. He could also be very accepting, very tolerant, unbelievably tolerant. The point is, Vaishnavas are unique. The Gaudiya tradition is the ultimate personal culture. There's no stereotype Vaishnava. They're all unique because their spiritual qualities are manifesting. And they're all uniquely personal and individual. So in a sampradaya, you need different kinds of gurus forming different links in the chain which connects us with Krishna. Some very strict, some very lenient, some avadut. I mean, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were, in some dramatic ways, completely opposite. Lord Chaitanya was very strict. You know, after having 2 wives, he took sannyas. He would never so much as, look at a lady. Lord Nityananda, after being a sannyasi for 30-some years, took 2 wives and was most of the time ostensibly quite oblivious to rules, regulations, and divisions caused by caste consciousness. So who's right? They're all right. They're all needed. All those different elements are essential for universal movement to address and inspire all souls from all backgrounds and all conditions. What we don't want to do is, project a fictitious nature upon Srila Prabhupada. Oh, he was very lenient. He was, and therefore I can do anything. No, you can't, because he was integrated with strict principles, very lenient and tolerant in his distribution. So you have to take the whole integration of these different factors to get a complete perspective of who Srila Prabhupada really was and how to properly serve him. Lord Nrsingadev, fierce to Hiranyakashipu because of his treatment of Prahlad. To Prahlad and the devotees in general, very gentle, very protective, very encouraging. Welcome, newcomer to the holy Dham. Placing his paw on your head, granting fearlessness. The image we perceive is based on the consciousness we project.
Can you repeat, Maharaj?
The image we perceive is based on the consciousness we project. It means when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. Therefore, don't try to force change externally, outwardly. Change yourself from within, and everything else will change in response.
Another way I heard, we don't see actually, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are.
Right. And therefore, when you change the way you are,
Right.
the things you see will change in response. Oh, but you can challenge that, I can tell my children, you'd better do this. And they will, and they'll make us regret it. Yes, we can make them do it, and they can make us regret it. Meaning that undue force creates resistance. Change yourself, and everyone else changes in response. Not just everyone, everything. Anything else?
So, Guru Maharaj, you
touched upon false ego earlier in the
Speak
conversation.
louder.
So we are taught that we should give up false ego, but sometimes we use false ego as a defense mechanism to protect ourselves from getting offended, hurt, misused, manipulated. So is that correct? If not, then how do we deal with it? But sometimes
Well, that's based on a misconception. The strongest protection is humility. And if we resort to false ego for protection, it means we don't have sufficient faith. The Muslim governor wanted Haridas Thakur put to death in the most shameful, humiliating way. He didn't resist, he just preached, and when he gave his short sermon, he changed the hearts of everyone. The courtiers, the Muslim governor, he was only the Qazi in charge of the religion and the state, who was so hard-hearted and merciless, insisted that he be put to death. He didn't resist Haridas Thakur. Lord Chaitanya protected him. Ganga Devi protected him. Holy Name protected him. And it's not that, we need to go to extremes to protect the body. What we need to protect is our faith. That's our life. And that's not to be achieved by use of false ego. I mean, Srila Prabhupada, citing the story of Narada Muni and his disciple, that you don't let people trample over you. You can, or his disciple, the snake, who didn't bite. And he said, inspired by Narada's influence, the snake wouldn't bite. So Narada came to visit him. How are you doing? He said, well, now that I cease to bite people, they trample all over me. And Narada said, well, I didn't say you can't show your fangs. The false ego is the poison. Bhakti deprives the fangs from their poison. The poison's the false ego. Doesn't mean you can't show your fangs if need be. What it means is you extract the venom, false ego. And you don't do it, to defend yourself. You do it as a matter of principle. Jesus said, be wise as serpents and gentle as lambs. But the Native Americans say you can't be as gentle as a lamb unless you're as wise as a serpent. Now that doesn't mean the common poisonous snake. It means, representatives of Nantashesh. Serpents have some element of wisdom. But gentle as lambs, wise as serpents, have to put the wisdom first and then be gentle. So what is wisdom? It's applied knowledge with realization of how to apply it in various circumstances. Humility doesn't mean to become a doormat. Humility means truth. You don't let people trample over the truth. You express the truth in whatever way, even if it entails showing your fangs. Your duty to truth is equal to your duty to humility. After you've expressed the truth, then you accept the consequences. with faith that Krishna protects. Oh, but, so-and-so got killed. Not talking about protecting the body, he's talking about protecting our faith, which is our real life. All right?
What? Tomorrow is Shivaratri, Maharaj. What's the significance and importance of us here living in New Vrindavan Dham and having Kundeshwara Mahadev to observe it?
Well, thank you for mentioning living here in New Vrindavan Dham.
Hold on, Maharaj. So tomorrow at around 8:40 we will have an Abhishek and Arati.
9:40.
9:40 north of Radhakund. At Radhakund.
Same.
North. Little bit north of
North side.
9:40. Around 9:40. Yeah, 9:45.
Thank you for mentioning living in the Dham. Because if we weren't living in the Dham, we might not have brought him here. We brought him here because actually entering the spiritual dynamics of Sri Dham requires blessings from certain personalities. First of all, Sri Guru, with great prominence, and Giri Govardhan, Mother Jamuna, Lord Shiva, Vrindadevi. You can appreciate through so many Siddhantic perspectives. I prefer a Leela that demonstrates the Siddhanta, and that is the jackal story. You all know the jackal story. One day, shortly after noon, at Radhakund, Krishna had just left to rejoin the Gopas, who were very jubilant in his association, leaving the gopis in the anguish of heartbreak due to separation. In that condition, they heard screams of a piteous creature suffering greatly. And as the saying tells it, you can't really feel the sufferings of others unless you're experiencing it some yourself. So Radha turned to Lalita and asked, how can anyone be in such distress in my favorite place? And Lalita Devi, very committed to pleasing her princess, ran off to investigate, where she found that a she-jackal who had come out of her lair, her shelter, in the burning heat of the midday sun, in search of water, came to Shiva Kori, Lord Shiva's own well, and was drinking, not noticing that village boys were gathering behind her with sticks to abuse her. When she turned around and saw, she ran down the road and the boys chased her. She entered a foxhole, and the boys took leaves and twigs and started fires at each entrance to the foxhole. And the she-jackal inside that hole was screaming piteously, not really thinking that there would be anyone so near and dear as to hear her torment. But there was. So Lalita Devi arrived on the scene, admonished those boys and sent them home with her own tender hands, extinguished all the fires. And then she reached her hand into hole. But the jackal was so traumatized, she couldn't even accept Lalita Devi's extended hand of grace. She was like paralyzed in trauma. And Lalita Devi very patiently continued coaxing her. Just take my hand. Finally she did. Lalita Devi coaxed her out of the hole, took her in her own loving arms back to Radha Kund, where Srimati looked. It's a jackal? And then she addressed her. Oh, Jiva, it is your greatest good fortune that Lalita Devi has brought you to Radha Kund right at this time, because this is when we all serve Krishna here in his favorite place. And now that you've joined our entourage, you too can serve Krishna every day at noon. And by the blessings of Srimati, the she-jackal became a gopi. That's the historical perspective. What's the allegorical? The she-jackal is us. A jackal is an outcast to dog society, which means it's the lowest of the low. She came out at midday, which means samsara, in the blazing heat of the summer sun at Govardhan, which from a material perspective is like the burning fire of an arid desert. She came out just looking for water to quench her extreme thirst. As the jiva soul seeks relief in this world, as Prahlad Maharaj said, the remedies we come up with cause more suffering than the initial ailment. So she was just seeking water. She found herself in a blazing, in a hole blazing on all sides with fire. Samsara. She cried out in grief, desperation, not believing that there could be anyone so near and dear as to hear her call, and there is. Srimati Radharani, the abode and source of divine grace, sent her immediate expansion, Lalita Devi, who is, in this case, representing Guru Tattva, seeking out that suffering soul, offering her extended hand, which is representing Krishna's hand. But the jiva was so traumatized and tormented, paralyzed in grief, could not even accept. Guru was so patient and tolerant, ever coaxing us, take shelter. She finally did, brought her to the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani, who granted her with eternal service to Krishna. Vaishnavanam Gita Shambhu, Lord Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava. And therefore, deeply imbued with compassion for all souls, including those who are most degraded, downtrodden, lowly, and outcast. He grants, along with these other significant personalities, Vrinda Devi, Jamuna, Gita Govardhan, access to Holy Dham. And we don't necessarily worship him regularly. We do what Nanda Maharaj did. Serve him on his appearance day with prayers of gratitude for his compassion on lowly souls and his grace, which is essential for entering deeply into the dynamics of the holy places which he guards. He's the guardian. Chaitanya can't enter the holy places without the approval of the guardian. So with that spirit and intention, we celebrate his appearance day with gratitude for protecting the holy places and granting us access and entrance to them. All right. Thank you all very much for your kind association.
Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Tagore Premanande Harigadaro.
Holiness Varsana Maharaj ki
Jai.